Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this edition of NEWS2. I'm Sandra Gumansing, and our top story: with the Trump presidency hitting the ground running, the Environmental Protection Agency was one of the first to receive new mandates under the new administration. The EPA was instructed to halt new grants until further clarification is given from the president. VI's DPNR Commissioner Henry spoke about the EPA's role and its effects in the VI. Richard Dorsey files this report.
The Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, which grants more than $4 billion annually in funds and grants, has been told to freeze all motion by President Trump. Commissioner of the Virgin Islands Department of Planning and Natural Resources, Ms. Henry, shared with TV2 News how this affects the territory.
As the Commissioner for DPNR, I see that the Division of Environmental Protection, and that's the division within DPNR that receives federal grant monies from the EPA, I see the division as a status quo. And I say that because I have not received any official communication from my region, Region 2, regarding our grants. And the information that I have seen, it's what I've read online. But for the most part, what I've seen is that the freeze has to do with new grants and contracts. So I'm going to assume that the funds that have already been awarded to the territory, that they remain with the territory. So we're continuing with our projects, and we're continuing to protect the environment. With DPNR, as I stated earlier, we're just going to continue to work as we do with any transition and with any new president, even here on locally, when there's a transition between governments, there's an awkward period in getting adjusted. So we're doing the same thing on the federal government. So for me, I don't see any reason to panic or be fearful. We're just continuing like we normally do.
Richard Dorsey, News 2.
Be sure to count on 2 for the latest changes about the Trump administration and how it will affect us here in the territory. Congresswoman Stacey Platts is mad that she was excluded from recent controversial closed-door meetings between the administration of Governor Kenneth Mapp, members of the legislature, and other stakeholders in the territory. Platts, in a letter addressed to Governor Mapp, questioned why he's excluded her from discussions on potential solutions to the territory's ongoing fiscal crisis, and complains that she should have been invited because of the territorial government's continued push for federal funding. Plaskett said that while some discussions among other people should be conducted in private, the public and press need to be involved and informed. Meanwhile, Senator Sen Blayden also expressed his concerns regarding some meetings. Here's more.
If someone invites me to a meeting and I'm not voting on a bill, I am going because I need to know what's going on in order for me to have a positive input, have conversation, know where they're coming from. Because remember now, we are the one in the 31st legislature. Asked for the governor, we did not pass the bill. We asked him to meet with the business community and everyone that was a stakeholder. Because there's no way we can pass a borrowing bill and the stakeholders were not involved. We are the one that asked for him to do that. So when he did what he did, and I was invited to a meeting, I didn't know what a meeting was about at the time, I went, and I will continue to go because that's what the people hired me here for, to do, to work, to meet, to have discussions, to communicate, and to make an informed decision. And that's what I did, and I will always do that because that's why I am here. I'm not here to play any games and this back and forth. We don't have the time for that. There's too much going on right now here in our territory for us to be dealing with all these different minor issues, who should go, who should not go. Really, I don't have the time for that. You know, I'm here to work, I'm here to meet, I'm here to communicate, and I'm here to get results.
In other news, Senator Triggs has asked the president of the 32nd legislature to take appropriate action to resolve the matter of the eligibility of Senator-elect Kevin A. Rodriguez to be seated as a member of the body. Senator Roach said that his request is consistent with the position of the legislature's legal counsel, who reviewed the matter earlier this month. In his letter to President Myron Jackson, Senator Roach wrote, "I am convinced by my own review of the matter and by the legal counsel's detailed review that the matter is appropriately within the province of the 32nd legislature now that the body has been convened. He said, "I am further convinced that this matter will become even more entangled by the several legal actions being maintained before the local courts, which may lead to conflicting and contradictory outcomes and which may continue indefinitely the untenable reality of unequal representation between the voting districts which constitute the body." The governing board of the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority has granted the go-ahead for the demolition of 4 decommissioned water desalination plants at the authority's power plant sites in Crum Bay and Estate Richmond. The approval came during the regularly scheduled monthly meeting of the board held on St. Thomas Thursday. The demolition of these units will provide the space desperately needed for the installation of the new generating units at the Randolph-Harley Power Plant, the first of which are expected on island at the end of the year. That came from WAPA's Executive Director, Julio Reimer Sr. He said the units converted seawater into potable water for customers of the authority. With changing technology, WAPA moved away from desalination a few years ago and entered into a long-term agreement with a company to generate potable water through seawater reverse osmosis. Turning to crime reports, the Virgin Islands Police Department is currently investigating a homicide that took place on Wednesday, January 25th at approximately 5:11 p.m. A citizen contacted the 911 emergency call center and reported several shots fired in the area of Building 21 of Paul M. Pearson Gardens housing community. Officers arrived to the scene and contact was made, they say, with a black male lying face down in what appeared to be a pool of blood. The male appeared to have suffered multiple gunshot wounds about his upper body. The male was later identified by his next of kin as 27-year-old Demoy Caraspi. Anyone having information about these crimes, you are urged to contact the Virgin Islands Police Department at 774-2211 or Criminal Investigation Bureau at 340-714-9807 or Crime Stoppers 1-800-222-TIPS or 911. CAPA representatives has scheduled a community action meeting on Tuesday, and you may remember it was originally scheduled for Monday, so it's now changed to Tuesday. They're calling on residents from the East End, Friedenhoy, Red Hook, Nada, and surrounding areas to attend and discuss the wave of unsolved crimes. The meeting will be held at Montessori School Auditorium again on Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. And you can call 340-513-4041 for information. President Donald Trump makes his first official flight on Air Force One today, attending a retreat for Republican lawmakers in Philadelphia. His trip comes as tensions are simmering between Mexico and the U.S. With more on this diplomatic showdown, Diane Gallagher has this report from Washington.
Mexican President Peña Nieto calling President Trump's bluff, tweeting that Mexico informed the White House this morning he would be canceling his trip to meet with Trump next week. The trip being scrapped less than 24 hours after Trump signed an executive order to build his long-promised wall along the southern border. And after Trump's tweet that maybe Peña Nieto should cancel his meeting if Mexico refuses to foot the bill. Trump telling Republican lawmakers at their Philadelphia retreat that the decision was mutual.
The President of Mexico and myself have agreed to cancel our planned meeting scheduled for next week.
On how the wall will be paid for,
I've said many times that the American people will not pay for the wall. And I've made that clear to the government of Mexico.
But the details are scant, and questions of how much the wall will cost now dogging the Republican leadership.
We are moving ahead, as the Speaker pointed out to our group yesterday, with
border supplemental.
Yeah, of a roughly
12 to 15.
Yeah, $12 to $15 billion. So
it appears U.S. taxpayers will pay that cost up front. Trump says that he plans to send a wall funding package for Congress to approve, and then Mexico would later reimburse the U.S. A plan that now appears to hang in the balance as the latest diplomatic dust-up plays out across the border. In Washington, Diane Gallagher.
Keeping our eye on the economy, Uber has surpassed Starbucks as the most common expense among business travelers. That's according to a new study from travel and expense software provider Certify. The company analyzed 40 million expenses from 1 million business travelers. Uber accounted for 6% of all business travel transactions in 2016. A reminder of the challenge car rental and taxi companies face from companies like Uber and Lyft As for Starbucks, it's still the most popular meal expense. The largest amount of money is still spent on airfare, followed by hotels. Let's take a look at the stock market watch there. The eye on the economy, a Dow is up 32, NASDAQ and S&P down. Coming up on News 2, we have much more, including your winning lottery numbers. Be sure to grab your pen and paper and details on a prescription lawsuit that's coming up. Welcome back. It's time for some Caribbean news. We turn to Dominica, where a program aims to teach young people about sexual responsibility. Here's more.
Topping the news. Premature sex is among the social problems which a Chicago-based criminologist is attempting to curb in the Silver Lake community. Dominican Dr. Peter Seja, who's a director of criminal justice at Chicago's North Park University, is spearheading a program called Better Me, Better You in Silver Lake. He has partnered with director of the Love One Teach One Foundation, Gloria Walsh, to make this happen. The idea is to provide the youth of Silver Lake with skills which will build their quality of life. He spoke to Channel 5 News during a recent trip here.
There's no secret about sexual abuse or sexual use. There are mentions about, some persons don't have a legal age for alcohol. Some persons may be experimenting with alcohol, or maybe certainly before they should, or maybe for the drugs in ways that they shouldn't. They live in an environment where it is well known that persons try different ways to make a living. And some of them, sometimes it creates confusion as to should I go that way or should I go another way. So they are immersed in a situation that is a situation of poverty, and situations of poverty come with those things, unfortunately. It's very rare that you have contexts of poverty that do not have some kind of illicit drug use, that do not have some sort of illicit drug sales and so on.
Low literacy levels and the lack of intact families are also issues plaguing the community.
And when young persons do not have a whole lot of privacy and they have exposure to men or young girls and boys that may have exposure to men that may see them as sexual ploy, and if they feel some levels of insecurity and they don't have a lot of protection, how do they learn to navigate their sexuality in ways that doesn't give themselves up before they are really mature?
Seja said the aim is not to castigate those involved, but to offer them a chance to reform their behavior.
Turn our attention to Puerto Rico. The Coast Guard medevaced a 68-year-old woman Wednesday morning from the MS Koningsdam cruise ship approximately 36 nautical miles northwest of Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Watchstanders with Coast Guard Sector San Juan Command Center were contacted by the crew of the MS Koningsdam, stating that one of the passengers, who was a U.S. citizen, had sustained a head injury and needed to be taken to a hospital. The watchstanders directed the launch of a Coast Guard Air Station Borinquen Dolphin helicopter to medevac the patient from the cruise ship. The helicopter crew hoisted the patient and cruise ship doctor on board and transported them to the Centro Médico Hospital in San Juan, where the patient was received by awaiting emergency medical personnel. Virgin Islands Department of Education announced today that food supplies for the school lunch program in the St. Croix School District are being fully replenished through local vendors. Merchants Market on St. Croix resumed supplying the department with food items. Plaza Extra East and West, Stop and Shop, and other local merchants, they say, are providing fresh fruit and other goods. Students participating in the school lunch program will see a variety of menu items included in meals. Some menu items were depleted during the temporary postponement of orders. The Department of Education say they're committed to providing students with healthy and balanced meal as part of its mandate to educate the whole child. The department regrets the interruption of services in its school lunch program on St. Croix and thanks the community for its support as the matter was being resolved. Meanwhile, there was early dismissal of all public schools today in St. Thomas. The Virgin Islands Department of Education's St. Thomas St. John District Office of the Insular Superintendent, they notified parents earlier this week of the dismissals they say were necessary to accommodate monthly job-embedded professional development for teachers. School will resume at normal times on Friday, January 27th. Well, here's the latest information about a prescription lawsuit that was held by the AG recently. What you need to know.
The government of the Virgin Islands has entered into a voluntary settlement agreement with Janssen Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, in which Janssen has paid the government of the Virgin Islands $300,000 to resolve claims related to the marketing of Risperdal in the Virgin Islands. This marks the single largest consumer settlement involving the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs in the history of that department. Risperdal is an antipsychotic drug approved to treat schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and irritability in people with autism.
The government of the Virgin Islands and the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs are determined to ensure that companies that do business in the Virgin Islands provide complete and accurate information to consumers.
Be sure to count on 2 to keep you updated. According to the Department of Health, the territory saw 23 new confirmed cases of Zika. So there are 650 confirmed cases on St. Thomas, 221 on St. Croix, and 81 on St. John. The number of confirmed cases of dengue on St. Thomas remains at 44, on St. Croix 23, and no new cases on St. John. The number of confirmed cases of Zika in pregnant women right now, it stands at 145. Grab your pen and paper. Martin Luther King Jr. brought hope and healing to America during a time that we needed it the most. He exemplified values such as courage, truth, justice, compassion, dignity, and humility. VI Lottery honored and celebrated Dr. King by including his image on the tickets that were drawn earlier today. Time to celebrate. If you are the lucky winner, stand by for the numbers.
The VI Lottery presents draw results of today's drawing on NEWS2. Here are the top prizes. Fifth prize for $20,000, 17270, 17270. Fourth prize for $30,000, 17943, 17943. Third prize for $40,000, 31813, 31813. Second prize for $65,000, 21659. 21659. And the winning ticket number for the grand prize of $175,000 is 33671. 33671. If your ticket number wasn't called, keep trying. One of these days, your number could win. The next drawing is February 9th. Play the VI Lottery and imagine the possibilities.
Good luck as you check those tickets. Now, this is something to put on your calendar. This Sunday's edition of the popular HGTV series Beachfront Bargain Hunt is expected to feature an all-native St. Thomas cast, including the buyers and realtor. According to Steve Bourne, who's the managing director of Virgin Locations, who handled the local production logistics for production company Magilla Entertainment, Beachfront usually airs every Sunday on HGTV at 8 p.m. Now, the show centers on the search for and buying a home or vacation villa in a seaside destination. Now, this episode, Staying Put on St. Thomas USVI, is a first for the show. Look for Rosa Thomas and Manuel McGrath to take center stage in Rosa's successful search for her new home on island fellow St. Thomian and real estate agent Dale Barry of Seaglass as they take them through the process. Magilla and Beachfront are frequent visitors to the U.S. Virgin Islands and having produced more than 10 episodes in all 3 islands. Be sure to tune in for that. Stick around. Your News 2 AccuWeather forecast comes your way next.
A look at our satellite and radar currently showing not too much going on across much of the Central Caribbean. I'm Shanae Shocker. Now, taking a look at our satellite, we have this large area of high pressure. That's keeping our easterly trade wind flow pattern pretty steady as we head throughout the next couple of days. A closer look shows not too much showers going on, a couple of clouds, but other than that, things are staying nice and dry. But over Puerto Rico, that's where band of showers have really set up across the region. We've seen a couple of those isolated showers, but But through tonight, we're going to be sitting mainly clear with a low of 73 degrees. We continue to see those winds out of the east, but into tomorrow, partly sunny skies. We have a high of 83 degrees. We also see still moderate risk of rip currents as well. Another front going to be approaching the region over the next few days. 83 degrees for St. Thomas, partly sunny skies. Down towards St. Croix, we're even warmer here, 85 degrees. And sticking with a mix of those clouds and sunshine. Now out on the waters with our winds out the east, fairly light to moderate, 10 to 15 knots. Not quite seeing any advisories on the Atlantic side of things. Our waves about 3 to 5 feet. Popping on over into the Caribbean, 2 to 4 feet, so a little bit calmer out here. And winds out the east, 10 to 15 knots. So overall, we are in the mix for some good weather. Now as we head towards the weekend, we do see just maybe an uptick in shower chances from Sunday into Monday. We have the tail end of a cold front going to push through, and that's going to stick with us into Tuesday as well. Not looking at any heavy downpours or anything like that, but just a passing shower or so throughout early next week. Back to you.
Thanks for that. Well, that means keep the sweaters out for those who are experiencing the cold front chills. We can expect more of that. Thank you. Time for our News to Weather picture there by Janalis Saldana of Ricardo Richards Elementary School, sharing a nice island scene there. Be sure to send us your News to Weather picture to be featured right here on the news to the address on the screen. Be sure to include your name, age, school, and brief description of your work of art. And be sure to tune in to see it right here on News 2. That is all for now. Thank you for joining us for all the latest. I'm Sandra Gamansing. Have a wonderful evening.